Textual Builder Supply is pleased to present you with this recording of the technical question that is listed in the title of this video.
This call may be monitored and recorded for quality assurance.
AB Supply, this is Terry. Okay, let's pick a topic that's more within the mainstream of builders hardware. So what else you got?
Automatic door bottoms.
Oh yeah, well, what question do you have about automatic door bottoms?
How they're installed.
Well, automatic door bottoms they're either going to be surface mounted or they're going to be mortised. They're generally surface mounted, meaning you just put them on the face of the door and you attach them. However, they can also be mortised, but under the heading of mortise, you can do a full mortise or you can do a semi-mortise. A semi-mortise is when you mortise the face of the door and you install it flush with the face of the door, meaning you can see it from the side that you mortise it. When you do a full mortise, you literally run what would probably be called a dado or a channel down in the center of the door, and it fits up in that channel. And when the door is closed, you don't see it at all. It's fully concealed. The most common way is surface mounting, because that's the easiest way to do it, because most people cannot mortise their door for whatever reason. Lack of tools, lack of knowledge, lack of the allowance of the door to permit you to modify it in that way. You may not be able to cut the bottom of your door. It could be, it could be made of steel. You're not gonna semi-mortise a steel door. And generally, surface mount units are mounted on the push side of the door. They can be mounted on the pull side, but what you really want to have happen with gasketing is that your line of defense be as close to the exterior of the opening as possible. So if you have an in-swing door, you would really want that unit to be surface mounted, because then it drops down in front of the door. That's where your line of defense is. You could also semi-mortise it or mortise it for purposes that may need to meet your code requirements or your aesthetic requirements. The problem with those other methods is that you're moving the line of defense further into the living space. If you have an outswing door, you can still surface mount it, but you need an additional piece of hardware to make that work. Temco has this additional piece of hardware. It's called a CAM 500, and it allows you to reverse the handling of this stuff. So that's how you mount those, or where they're mounted. When it comes to sizing them, all three methods are really going to require a little different size. In surface mount models, when you have the need to determine what you're going to cut it to or order it at, you stand on the push. You first unlock the door. You then stand on the push side of the door and you make sure the door is closed. You measure the distance between the stops and you deduct 1/8 of an inch. If you go to a semi-mortise mount, you're generally ordering it the net width of the door in the location where you're going to be mortising it. If you're going to do a full mortise, same logic applies, but if your door is beveled, you might need to account for that bevel ever so slightly. You might order it 1/16 of an inch bigger, or meaning you might trim it in the field to a little slightly different dimension than otherwise. When it comes to ordering these items, I think customers really need to plan on trimming it in the field, because all of the factories, whether it be Zero or Lease or National Guard or Dorbin or Legacy or Combo or Draft Seal or Pemco, they're all going to have in their catalog a plus or minus. You can't give them a 32nd of an inch and expect they're going to hit that dimension. In fact, I find that it always fluctuates about 1/8 of an inch, but I've also seen thresholds a 1/2 inch too long. And some customers have complained about that. Hey, I ordered 36, you shipped me at 36.5. I don't have any way to cut this. It's just weather stripping, and it's specifically automatic door bottoms, because they got to fit in a tight place. The client's got to expect to have to trim them in the field. So those are the mounting methods. Do you have a follow-up question on automatic door bottoms?
Which application do you recommend, surface or mortise mount?
The application for surface is when the client has an in-swing door and they can suffer the hardware being attached to the face of the door, meaning The projection of the hardware itself off the bottom of the door is not problematic. It could be problematic in the sense that you might have a piece of hardware encroaching into the clear opening space. It could be problematic if you don't want that piece of equipment hanging into the opening such that foot or other traffic is going to hit it. So you might take that surface mount model and mortise it just because you want to get the hardware out of the way. As far as I'm concerned, I like hardware to be concealed in all instances. And if it was me, I would probably do a semi-mortise, and then I would look to, I would do a semi-mortise in almost all instances. But there are times that you can't, meaning, let's say that you've got a fire door. You can't mortise that in the field. It's not permissible. I like to conceal hardware, but I also like to have an effective seal. And just like locksmithing and security, it's always a compromise. The more keys you have working a cylinder, the more you reduce the security. Automatic door bottoms are the same thing. If you want to go for aesthetics, you sacrifice the seal. You conceal it and mortise it, you're going to move your line of defense further. And so now the water can get to the face of the door without being stopped. And underneath the door, actually, a little bit as well. That's not ideal. The advantage, you've concealed it. The disadvantage is you've compromised your seal. So it's almost always they're surface mounted is the bottom line. And that's just what people live with. I also like them mortised because all of these models actually make noise. Some models are better at others at muffling the sound. I didn't actually mention PDB, Parker door bottoms. They're very muffled. They have a good STC rating. Zero does a good job at muffling them, but they have to muffle them because you've got clanking aluminum hitting. And I've had clients that have called and said, I've got a bedroom that I want to put this on because I want to reduce the transmission of sound through the opening. What ends up happening is in the middle of the night, when they open their own bedroom door, you can hear that clanking really loud. And it's an issue. That's an issue.
Understood.
What else you got?
That's about it.
Yeah, okay. So let's pick this up again next week with a new topic, and thank you for asking that question. I'll talk to you later.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And let's just add on to what we were talking about earlier about the two primary means of installing automatic door bottoms. So here's a common, typically surface-mounted 362 by 0. It's in an anodized aluminum finish. It's typically surface-mounted. Typically. Now, product brochure. This document I pull up because it illustrates exactly the concept. This is what surface mounting will look like. Your line of defense is here. This is clearly a door that is, I would argue that this is an outswing door, most typically. It could be inswing, but it's likely outswing. The point is that it's mounted on the push side of the door. We know that because of this bump-up type threshold. Your line of defense is obviously right here. Okay, if it's an outswing door, hey, it is what it is. I'd probably put a door sweep with a drip cap out here. I've got a line of defense here, and then I've got my fallback position here. Okay, fine. This is what it looks like semi-mortising it. You can take that same surface mount model and now mortise the face of the door. Make it flush. Why would you do that? Possibly because very often this is 15/16 thick, so it's almost an inch thick. Well, that's a lot of material to have projecting off the face of the door, so that when your door goes from 0 to 90 degree, let's do a little experiment, 32 inch, right? That's the clear opening space required for ADA compliance. Let's do a little experiment here. Here's your door. Now that 32 inch comes into play because we have to have a clear opening of 32 inch. Okay, so if this is 36 inch, let's just say, 36 minus inch and a quarter because these are 5/8, that's going to be 34 3/4. Okay, well the issue though is the door is going to encroach into the opening ever so slightly, and I'd need to drop that into AutoCAD to know exactly what that is. But let's say that it encroaches into the opening a 1/2 inch, and I'm just using hypothetical, fairly accurate numbers. So we're at 34 3/4 minus a 1/2 inch, 34 1/4. Now you got 15/16 worth of door bottom. That's going to put us at 33 5/16. So you're still clearly okay, but you wouldn't be if this was a 210 door. And the 1/2 inch is a guess. You'd have to check that. But the point is do you want the door bottom encroaching into the space? You see it on hotels very often. Usually the automatic door bottoms that I see on hotel doors that are surface mounted are the ones that are most beat up. Especially, they'll be abandoned in place sooner or later. There's the Hilton Hotel at O'Hare Airport. It's at the airport. Been there for 40 years. All of their automatic door bottoms were surface mounted and abandoned in place years ago because they're surface mounted and they're not nearly this thick, but they just take a beating, and you can tell. And then obviously mortise style. The advantage of this is that you don't see it, and it can't take a beating because it's hidden and concealed, and it won't be a problem for ADA in terms of projecting hardware. It could be an issue where you need to think about ADA compliance with reduced opening forces. They do make automatic door bottoms with reduced force on the plunger, so you might want to think about that. You might want a low closing force model. Zero does offer them. And in fact, if I was using closers, I'd probably always use them. But as we scroll through the rest of the product catalog, right here we see a cross section. Surface mount, semi-mortise, mortise. I might call this a dado. I'm really not sure. This would certainly be a mortise. This would be mortise. It'd be like a rabbeted edge, but there it is. This is a mortise, like a hinge is mortised. This, I don't know that I would call that a mortise. I might want to call it a dado. Now you know the rest of the story. Any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you. Architectural Builders Supply hopes you have enjoyed this program. Please click thumbs up, please subscribe, and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.